And Claudia. So in case you don't want to be recorded, heads up. Okay. So yes, I have to tell them it's okay. All right, so it's my pleasure to be kind of the master of ceremonies for this, and I'm going to speak more into the computer because you're watching me over there.
Right.
Is that all right with
Fine.
you? Okay. So I'm turning my back to the audience. It's interesting. So as we begin, I just want to thank and acknowledge Claudia for the amazing work that you have done, Claudia, for this extraordinary time, this shocking time, to create this fitting and appropriately complex send off for Joel. Because, like Joel, Claudia herself is a person who gets people together. So she had a vision for this opportunity, and she also had the friends, and especially in Greg, to be able to pull it off. And we've superseded time and distance. It is being recorded, and you can also find it later on YouTube. So, all of you, thank you for your messages of support and your offers of help during this most tender of times. And gratitude for all the gifts of humor and love and vibrancy that you added to Joel's life. You know his life was dedicated to community and communication, and each one of your relationships was important to him and enriched his and Claudia's lives. And so today is a day about stories, memories, poignant joy, and yes, laughter. Life can be complex and bittersweet, as we know. So with a little help from her friends, Claudia has brought us all here together. And with Joel's engineering mind, love of parties, and spirit of flying, he is no doubt going to enjoy it more than anyone. So let's begin. I do think that a celebration of life is only also appropriate if we take into account the spiritual nature of death. And so I would just like for a moment to bring you to a more contemplative place. We come together to consider the continuity of life, and with reverence and honor, love and respect, to consider the mystery of life of one who is dear to us and to God, Joel Moore. While there is sorrow in our hearts because his human presence is no longer with us, and yet beyond our grieving, there's an inner knowing that he lives as an infinite spirit in and of God. The soul knows of journeys our mind cannot yet comprehend. We can only trust the inner knowing of the divine wisdom of each within each of us, telling us what we have always known, that there will always be and ever will be life, alive as spirit, consciousness. So Joel has left us for another journey and on his own mysterious timetable. But the gift of his life remains with us in our hearts and minds. And today we recognize and celebrate his unique gifts to each of us. When one touches our lives, it's for us to pass on that special touch and to keep it alive on this plane. So we ask and accept comfort for those who are left behind. It has been known that the flow of life is eternal as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. And so now, let's each of us know in the peaceful silence of our hearts that we acknowledge our beloved friend Joel. So imagine yourself on a glorious seashore or beside a rushing stream, and you're standing close or hand in hand with him. It's the golden dusk, and you're sharing the sunset with him. Recognize the eye of the soul has a vision to a far and distant land. And as you stand there with Joel in this majestic moment, look into his eyes and If there's a message you'd like to share with him, do so now. Any forgiving to do so now. And recognize that each of us has received a special gift from our friend Joel. Let's remind ourselves now of that gift. And we gently release Joel to his next experience of living. Let's do so with celebration and joy, for we know that our sunset is Joel's sunrise. We trust Joel's presence and love will be felt through time, as gently as a ripple in a still pond. We also know that for his family, Joel's moving on also signifies new beginnings. And we hold dear for them that the unfoldment of both his and their new life are done easily, harmoniously. I offer a blessing to Claudia and Sarah Lee and Bill and Jean, for all his loving relatives, extended family, and dear friends. For them as well to rest in the loving care of the divine. I know that their experience of the new life is one of peace, joy, and harmony as well. So we close knowing, Heavenly Father, Mother, God, and Spirit, with great faith, we declare the continuity of all consciousness of life, of Joel's life. And we know that there's a spark of knowing in each of us, in the spirit of our beloved Joel, that burns brightly the eternal flame of life. And so it is. So, we have a lovely poem from one of our hosts, Denise in Modesto, and she's going to read one of Joel's favorite poems.
The poem is High Flight by John McGee Jr. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence, hovering there. I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark nor even eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high, under-trespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
Thank you, Denise. I am going to do, you have on your tables a copy of the obituary, and many of you have received it already, and if you haven't, we are happy to send you a copy of it. But I have some highlights, brief highlights of Joel's life. Our beloved friend, husband, brother, cousin, uncle, son, all those things, Joel G. Moore was born August 25th, 1945, and passed away unexpectedly, shockingly, on October 31st, 2021, of an embolism to his lungs following surgery at the VA hospital in Portland. And in between those dates, he lived a rich and blessed life, the last 31 years with his wife and best friend, Claudia. Together, they filled their lives with engineering a long succession of four-legged rescued dogs, cats, squirrels, and bunnies, with exploring photography of special places and enjoying their family and friends in all corners of their lives. Joel was born in San Jose, California, and his family moved to Eureka, where at 14, he met his good friend and future first wife, Lorna McLeod. And you'll hear from Lorna as one of many of our four hosts. They married young and he joined the Air Force, and with his lifelong love of flying and passion of all things mechanical, he became a jet engine mechanic. And that combined passion extended to classic cars and an enduring interest in the history of flight. Together, he and Lorna traveled to many locations of his Air Force postings, but they settled back home near their families in Humboldt, where he studied at the College of the Redwoods and Humboldt State University and completed his business degree at the University of San Francisco. He specialized in small business development. He held many rewarding positions serving entrepreneurs and especially tribal councils and leaders. During these times, he made some of his most enduring friendships among his colleagues, some of whom you'll hear from today. He developed and operated the Small Business Entrepreneurship Program in the 80s for the Hupa Tribe Manpower Program. And that successful program was later moved to Redwood Community Action Agency's Community Development Division. Joel next moved to Modesto, California, to lead the Stanislaus County Small Business Development Program. He dynamically launched that program in 1 week's time. Joel often said the other reason he was called to Modesto was to meet Claudia at the Unity Church in Modesto and to marry again. And he expanded his family again, embracing all of Claudia's kin. In 1990, Joel and Claudia married in a spring garden wedding, and Sarah Lee and Bill Morad gained a beloved son-in-law. And they decided to move to Portland, Oregon, where Joel launched his career as an independent small business coach and began his writing career. Exploring and falling in love with the Northwest, they found a rich playground for hiking, biking, photography, and loving each other. The Pacific Northwest proved a rich playground for all their interests that they shared and their endless stream of adopted pets. Though his career format evolved and changed, Joel's bright mind continued his research, studying, and thinking across many disciplines, bringing many creative ideas to his clients and friends. And he held engaging conversations with everyone he met. He was constantly expanding his sense of inclusive community. Joel's survived by his eldest sister, Jean Crook, from Mountain View, California, and his brother, Bill Choles, and Ginny of Kelseyville, California, as well as multiple much-loved nieces and nephews from all sides. And also his beloved mother-in-law, Sarah Lee Morad, and brother-in-law, Bill. As a sweet testament to the strengths of Joel and Claudia's relationship, Joel had a second mother, who was named Mom Lois McLeod, a second mother for Joel, keeping him and Claudia as extended members of the McLeod clan. Last but not least, all those beloved relatives and friends who predeceased him: mother, father, sister, brothers, and father-in-law. Joel loved them all and honored them all. So let me tell you how today is going to go. We have a room being hosted by Lorna McLeod in Eureka, being supported by Greg Gare as her Zoom wizard. And we have the next room, we have people, Bill Harper is from the Air Force, and he is going to corral and be host for Air Force sharing. And then we have Denise, whom you've already met, who's in Modesto, and then wrapping it back up around here in Portland. So that takes his early days to the present. So I just want to invite you to think about stories that you might want to share. This is a good time to be preparing a little bit ahead, to know what you want to share. And the interesting thing about Zoom is that in order for the rest of the country to see us, we have to be seen by the camera. So when you are going to share, you probably need to go close to the camera so you can be seen on the computer screen and therefore seen on the big screen. Is that clear for everyone? So to be concise as much as you can, and to be as to take an opportunity to share one or two of your best stories, and then you'll have more time afterwards for refreshments. And so with that, I want to say thank you again for inviting me, and I'm going to say, take it away, Lorna. Yeah.
Just remember that everybody in their homes or individual sites can also share.
Oh yes, thanks for that, Claudia. If you're in your individual sites, you will be on the checkerboard too. And if you are watching this on speaker view, you will see the speaker large. But if you want to see the whole, gallery, it will look like that. That's all of our together right now. All of those people, the ones with just their names, don't have their cameras on. But if you're going to share, and you can turn on your camera, it would be great. The other thing I want to do is recommend that when you speak, you introduce yourself and just a little bit how you know him, because they can't see your names if you're in one of the rooms. So that's all of the logistics that I wanted to offer you. And I'm going to suggest, take it away, Lorna.
So Lorna McLeod, dear friend. Since we were 14, met in high school. And we're dear friends for a number of years, and then decided to get married. So we did. And the marriage didn't work out. So one of my great joys in life is that even though the marriage didn't work out, we were able to remain friends, and remain friends absolutely until the day of his death. And so it is my great joy to be the host for this room, the Eureka Room. Joel and I moved here in 1973, as was said, for him to go to community college and then to the university here. And he had many friends here. I think one of my favorite stories about Joel is when he and I were splitting up, my mom drew me aside and said, now, Lorna, honey, I want you to know that Joel is my son, and you'd best not try to drive him away just because the two of you are splitting up. And I said, no, Mom, not planning on it. She said, because if you do, you, Lorna, won't be welcome in my home. So that goes to how dear Joel was to my mom and to all of my family. So I want to give some other people in the room a chance to have their stories. So Greg, would you like to speak?
Well, my name's Greg Gare, and I first met Joel pretty much on my first job out of college when I graduated from Humboldt State University, and a couple other people in the room. Terry Coltra was the director of manpower up in the Hoopa Valley Tribe, and John Woolley was someone working on a consulting basis with them, who was hired to mentor me, or as I like to say, babysit me on my first job out of college. And Joel came on board for a very innovative business development project that Terry had put together out in Hoopa to do low-income entrepreneurial development, a series of classes and one-on-one consulting. And it was a really eye-opening experience. Joel has always been an expert in business development, and particularly in small business development and entrepreneurial development. And there's a particular story I like to share as we went through our classes and our one-on-one consulting with a lot of different folks on the reservation. In one of the first classes, he came out and handed out a bunch of little cutout discs to everybody in the class. And on the disc, it said TUIT. Some of us know this story. And he said, I want to give one of these tuits to everybody in the room, because you're going to come in following weeks, and you're going to tell me you didn't do your marketing study, or you didn't do your pro forma financials, and you're going to tell me you didn't have time to get around to it. Well, I've just given you a round to it. So you've got your round to it. Make sure you do the stuff that you're doing between classes. And it really kind of was an epitome of Joel. He would tell puns, he would tell jokes, he would give you opportunity for spiritual and professional growth. He would wrap it all up in the topic that he was working on in business development. And I've always thought how people laughed and they remembered that. And as they went through the classes and completed their assignments and their consulting, working on their own business ideas for their own business startups, even just a little bit more motivated by his combination of humor and professionalism and knowledge about the subject of business development. He became a dear, dear friend, like family, and we're going to miss him. Going to miss him a lot. And that's my Joel story. John, Gary?
So my name is Jerry Emberson. I'm Joel's niece, and anyone who knows me knows I'm not a public speaker. But I just wanted to say that he was one of my favorite uncles, and he gave the best advice, and now I may need to pay for therapy. So, you know, but he also understood me. He got me. He knew my impatience about life. And I'm going to miss his advice.
Hello all, my name is Terry Coltra, and I'm the notorious one that hired Joel and a whole group of business development specialists in the Hoopa Valley, the Hoopa Valley Tribe, a tribal association or a tribe that is a few miles here from Eureka. It was an interesting process. It was my first time with a group of very well understanding and knowledgeable workforce development and business development folks. And Joel always brought a real interesting portion, a part of it to the conversation. He always had a pun, as we all know, and he was one that would keep things light and would basically provide some semblance of order while we were going through this on a reservation. In fact, it was the first time a business development program had ever been tried on a reservation in California and basically throughout the United States. So it was an experience for us, and he was a great part of the team. And I miss him.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's John Woolley, and I was one of the troika of individuals that thought we could do a lot of good things, and we did. You know, it took a while sometimes, but what I really appreciate about Joel is he stood out with his humor and good graces at the same time as we were tackling new territories together, especially in business development. We talk about economic development, but that's not the same as business development. And so I learned a lot about the separation and what it meant to people in communities, especially like in faraway places like for us in Hoopa. It was tough. It was taking a germ of an idea and trying to plant it in a territory that's not used to these type of developments, if you will. But Joel and others were able to make a place for it. And to this day, we find business and economic development going well. So Joel was a leader and a fun guy to be around. So I appreciate him and I miss him deeply. Thank you.
Fun guy. Love it.
Hello, my name is Todd Chittenden, Jerry's husband, and just a small note about family. One time, let's see, I think about 2007, my folks, my uncle, and our kids went up to visit my mother's brother all the way up in Alaska. And you heard the story about how Joel was beloved and brought into the McLeod clan and could not be separated. He kept that process and extended it to me and our boys, my folks, inviting us into their house, even though Jared wasn't even with us at the time. And we maintained a great relationship over email, talking, philosophizing, mostly, honestly, about science fiction and fantasy. But I got to see, as everybody's mentioned, about the humor, but also his love and family. Thank you.
So this is all of the people that we have here who are going to speak. So we'll turn it over to our next room. And with blessings, blessings to be here.
Oreos are cute for the Air Force.
Bill Harper, can I call on you? And then if you put on your gallery, if you know who all of the people who might want to speak. But I just want to say one thing, and that is after we go around, we will open it up to everybody with the whole gallery. So if you have in mind that you want to speak, you could also put it in the chat. You could also, do you know where the chat is? It's down at the bottom of your screen. You could also mention that you want to speak as well, and we'll make sure that Greg will monitor that, and we'll make sure that everyone who wants to speak can in the amount of time. So Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm Bill Harper. And before I get started, I'd like to say hi to Lorna. Haven't seen or said hi to her in, Lord knows, too many years. So hi, Lorna. Met Joel back in, about 1966 when he came to Castle Air Force Base in Merced, California. And there were many of us there. Unfortunately, of the 10 that we still keep in contact with, there's only 2 of us today. But people talk about Joel and his puns and talking and whatnot. Remember times we would meet Claudia and Joel in Wairika, California. And the first time I had seen Joel after many years after leaving the Air Force, he and I sat up one night, cured all the world's problems. Took us till about 3 o'clock in the morning, but we managed. He enjoyed long conversations. And truly, as everyone has said, he will be missed by all. And at that, Mike, you got something you want to say?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And I too would like to say hi to Lorna. I haven't seen or talked to her since Broadway apartment days in Atwater, California. I also met Joel right around 1967 at Castle Air Base. We formed an instant friendship, partly, I think, because we shared the same birthday, August 25th, 1945. So that got us off on the right foot. And I was soon to find out that he was, I always called him a deep thinker. He would bring up subjects from astronomy to zoology and would know stats and details and go on with information about these subjects. We formed a very close friendship. We kept in touch over the years once we separated from the service. And I think one of the things Joel is very happy about is in 2003, and Claudia organized a reunion of some of us Air Force buds at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, for the 100th anniversary of flight. And I think he was so pleased to see everyone. We only had about eight to 10 people, but he was so pleased to see that he brought all these people together, and we had a very memorable occasion. Over the years, we would text and email quite a bit. And I also found that he had a love of older cars. And when he found out I had a couple of 55 Chevys, we just went on and on about how good they are, and you know, the cruise nights we would go to. He'll be missed. He'll be sorely missed. I'll miss our birthday calls every year, and but I will keep him in my heart and in my head. Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the Air Force who would like to, or those days would like to speak at this time?
Unfortunately, Mike and I were the only ones who were able to make it today.
You are well represented. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move along, and we're going to move to the days of Humboldt and Eureka. Take it away, Denise. Modesto, I'm sorry, I just said that wrong. I get confused. It's all, you know, California. Spoken like an Oregonian, sound like it. Denise Modesto.
Hi, I'm back, Denise. I'm a cousin of Claudia's through marriage. And so I wanted to say a little story of when Joel and Claudia were married in May of 1990. My youngest, Jeffrey, who's a Zoom host here, was 6 months old. And as we were driving to the lovely venue, as a house, he fell asleep. So I decided, which you probably don't do today, but I was going to leave him in the car in the driveway asleep. And he's still here. And so I thought that the ceremony probably wouldn't be too long. So he would sleep for a little while and I'd go get him and he'd be fine. Well, the ceremony went longer than I expected. And I probably made 4 or 5 trips to the car and checked on him. And he was still there and safe. And the ceremony finished and he woke up, and then we had a great time after. So that's a story that I remember. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, my husband and Claudia's cousin.
My name is Tom Solomon, and I am married to the host, but I'm also part of that kinfolk that you talked about. I'm part of Claudia's kin by first cousin. My best story for memory of Joel was back in the, I guess this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. Joel worked for a company called Connetco, and Connetco was a water purification and water softening company. And it was really sort of cutting edge at that time, which doesn't surprise me. He'd be involved in it. And he came to me, I'm in the commercial real estate business. He gave me an opportunity to represent his company in pursuit of a building. Well, to my surprise and pleasure was that it was a really big building. And it turned out to be a 20,000 square foot lease with a great length of time. And I remember I was pretty young in the business at the time, feeling almost like I wasn't necessarily deserving or worthy of being able to handle an account like that. And Joel made me feel like I certainly was. And for that, I'm quite grateful. And I know that my uncle Bill liked to keep his nose in what we were up to. And I know he took great pride in knowing that his son-in-law helped his nephew and vice versa. So for that, my connection went on with Joel, and I will miss him. So love to you, Claudia. Thank you. Who's next?
I think I have, I'm sorry, I think I have a lot of camera shy people here. So I think we're signing off from Modesto and moving to Portland in the Northwest.
There might be some other folks from the Modesto crowd that might want to share that are on Zoom independently.
Thank you. We'll just let you go. When we do this, that's people who are out there who would like to just go one right after another. After one is done, then they'll mute, then you can unmute yourself. That would be, I think, really workable. Brad, thank you for jumping in.
All right, well, this is Jeff Morad. I'll pretend like I'm part of the Modesto group since there's not specifically a Newport Beach group today. Although my partner Penny Lee and I, who's sitting next to me, will at least represent that for the time being. First, a shout out to my dear mom and my dear sister in different places today, but certainly both close to our hearts. And I wish I could see my mom and my sister, but maybe eventually I will, both. But you know, for me, first of all, Joel was my brother-in-law. I only had one, and I've only had one, and really don't expect any more. Although, you know, that's Claudia's choice, not mine. But for today, I'm proud of the fact that Joel was indeed my brother-in-law. Had the good fortune of being in, there's the rest of the crowd, Modesto, nice. But I was proud of the fact that back in 1990, I had a chance to be in their wedding. And, you know, for me, rather than, you know, lay out stories and memories, the truth is, the only thing that ever mattered to me, same thing that mattered most to my mom and dad, is that Joel was a great husband to my sister. And that's the kind of calling and the kind of, you know, ultimate relationship that we all hope and pray for. And I will say that, you know, I'm certain until the day he went into the hospital in Portland, there was no more, and frankly, until his death, there was no more loyal a partner that my sister could have had. And I'm just, you know, thrilled that they had the time together that they did. Very sad to have lost him prematurely, but I'm grateful for Joel and for everything that he represented to my family. And I thank everyone on this call for their support. It's great to see the showing, you know, across, in many ways, across the Western U.S. And thrilled to have known Joel as a friend and as a brother-in-law. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. I have to. I'm Barbara Warren.
What you mean by cat?
What? Am I able to speak? I'm not sure. I don't know what happened. That's weird. They're saying yes, but.
Yes, you're able to speak. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Our relationship with Joel was a little different. We weren't part of a community. We're part of Claudia's family. There was a number of years back, Claudia was able to reconnect to her biological family. And my husband, Ray, is Claudia's uncle. And we didn't know Claudia before that time, but I'll tell you, when Claudia and Joel came into our lives, they just enriched our lives so much. And we became very close. And what I can say about Joel is that he was a very gentle, sweet, kind soul. His spirit was always filled with positive energy. That's what I knew of Joel. So he was a wonderful human being that I am so grateful to have had in our lives. And know that I loved him dearly, as I love Claudia. We all do. So we send our condolences to Claudia. And thank you for this opportunity to share our feelings with you guys. Thank you now.
Hi, I'm Colleen Sherline. Can you hear me? Thumbs up, great.
We can hear you just fine.
Hi, again, I'm Colleen Sherline. I'm calling in from Scottsdale, Arizona. I met Joel in 1995 or 6 in the Portland area and have stayed in contact with Joel and Claudia for all these years. Off and on, we've connected. And when I think of Joel, he was just such a, and several people have mentioned what I'm going to say, but the words kind and gentle and caring and loving, I've heard all of those mentioned. And that's when I think of Joel, that's what my heart shares, is that's what I feel about him. One of his special attributes was being a phenomenal listener. And I was going through a specifically challenging time in about 04 or 05. And Joel was so supportive of me at that time. And I know when you think of, all of you think of him also, he was a blessing to all of us. Claudia, I can see you in the background there, and I'm reaching out to say, the two of you have had the most beautiful connection. And the two of you, when I think of you both as, and your relationship truly as love made visible. So let's just take a moment and close our eyes. Take a deep breath. And Joel, the light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is, and all is well. Fly high, our friend. Thank you.
I'm Robert Crook. I'm
Hi.
Joel's nephew, and I just wanted to talk about the fact that Uncle Joel was so much a visionary. The fact that we are doing his memorial in various locations throughout California and Oregon, and it's being streamed across the United States is such a Joel thing. I mean, it was about being connected to people. It was very much about bringing people together and getting them to achieve their goals. You know, we talk about equity and inclusion today. That is something that he was really striving for decades previous. I think of Joel as someone who really was such a visionary. Such a man who was ahead of his time. I've inherited his deep thoughts and his voice and some of his facial features, and I just look at myself in the morning and think, gee, I sort of have Uncle Joel in me, and so he will always be a part of me. I appreciate his counsel. I wish, my biggest regret is I didn't get to spend as much time as I should have with him. But he'll always be in my heart.
Hi, I'm from Samara Kemp. You want me to go ahead? Or you? Sally, is that you?
Go ahead, whoever that was. Who's that? Go ahead.
This is Samara Kemp.
Go ahead.
And I don't know why we've got your picture up there, but I recognized you. Anyway, my time with Joel started with a meeting, a club directors meeting at the Shalom Center in Modesto. And we had those very often, and I liked him a lot. And I got to know Claudia, and for some reason it got to me that they would like each other. And so I found time that I could tell them both that this is how I felt about them. So for some reason, they give me credit for getting them married. And I was at that wonderful wedding. And Sally, I know who you are, okay? Anyway, I'm very pleased that Claudia called me, and I wanted her to know that I had been sent a letter by Joel when it was before they were married, about 3 years before they were married. And he had written to me, and I have kept it all these years. And I have my oldest son on this Zoom, and he's going to read the letter to you, which I think you'll enjoy. It's something that we all know Joel would do. So this is very important to me, and I want to send it to Claudia because I've saved it and I think she needs to have it. But she will have to give me her now address. I don't have that. I've got, the email address and the messages and that kind of thing. But anyway, so Claudia, if you'll do that, I would appreciate it. And now can I turn it over to my son to read the letter?
Sure. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, so the thing I most remember, I actually had gone and stayed with Joel and Claudia in Portland one time, and I met them in the Modesto days as well. And that twinkle in Joel's eye, as we all know, is that smile and that twinkle, really is the thing I remember most. But this letter is very much Joel. I think this was shortly after he had met Claudia, as you can see. And it looks like my mom was sort of saying, whoa, maybe put on the brakes a little, Joel, or something. That seems like that was the lead up to it. But anyway, this was written on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1987. And as you know, they got married in 1990. It says, "Dear Sammy," that's my mother, Samara. "I enjoyed our conversation on Tuesday Eve. I found it very comfortable sharing my thoughts and perspectives with you. You are indeed a new friend who's also a longtime friend. I appreciate your sage wisdom regarding Claudia. Be assured it is not my intent to force my friendship with her into a mold. Rather, it is my intent to invite her upon a journey. I can understand how an individual's certainty over what they want could be construed as impatience. However, patience is one attribute that I draw upon every day. Poet William Blake had some cogent words about that, which we find beautiful. He who bends himself a joy doth the winged life destroy, but he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise." Over the last 20 years, I've had the good fortune to have had a few lovely and exceptional women teach me how to love them well. I've also had the good fortune to be in a marriage for 11 years. That for the most part was a good one. I have a clear understanding of love and commitment and also understand the common illusions. It is important that if I have a significant commitment, it must be with a woman with whom I find a spiritual compatibility as well as intellectual and emotional equality. I believe in Claudia, I have found that. Sammy, I will not force this emerging relationship into a mold. I will instead nurture it. And as my feeling for her evolves, I will openly share those feelings with her. That's the risk in life, the sharing of the inner self. And if my invitation to her to explore new paths with me shall cause me pain, well, I would do it anyway. All is as it should be. The door is open just a crack, and I've seen a little of what she wishes to do with her life. Any man who loves her must allow that to happen, to not impede her journey and to provide a safe harbor for the return. Anne Lindbergh spoke to the courage of that kind of love. And then there's a quote from Anne Lindbergh here. When you love someone, you do not love them all the time in exactly the same way from moment to moment. We have so little faith in the ebb and flow of life, of love, of relationships. We leap at the flow of the tide and resist in terrors its ebb. End quote. It seems to me that the man who is in Claudia's heart must be one who has a balanced view of himself, who acknowledges his hard side, his soft side, his vulnerable side, one who understands where he has been and some idea where he wants to go, although uncertainty and ambiguity is okay also. Yet that man must be open to change, open to be Claudia's student as often as he is her instructor. Only the passing of time will tell if I am that man. As each week goes by, it is a certainty that I'm growing to love her. I feel blessed that she is in my life. Take care. May 1988 provide the self-fulfillment of your dreams, Joel. So we thought that was appropriate to share. You can all hear Joel in that, and much love to you, Claudia, from Sam, my mom, Sammy, and I, and to everyone else. Thanks.
For me too, because my husband, Charlie Lindbergh, performed that marriage 31 years ago. Some of you may have been there. And I just think talking with Claudia not too long ago, and this sad news, but remembering Joel and Claudia together, and how many times Charlie would say, because Claudia is part of my family, my bonus daughters, Charlie's daughters and Claudia are very close relationships. And Charlie always said that Claudia and Joel were meant to be together. And if anyone went to one of Charlie's weddings, you would know it wouldn't be over quickly. So it would be good to check on your children really quickly, because he loved to talk about the beauty of relationships and the beauty of sharing true love with each other. And he felt that Claudia and Joel shared that true love, and he knows that it did. And my blessings to you, Claudia, and knowing that you and Joel had something really, really special. I'm grateful for the time that we've shared together, and peace to you, my dear.
That was quite an encore. My husband just gave
Yeah, no kidding.
Wow.
Is there anybody else who'd like to share from out there in the world? At this
Hello,
point,
can
then we'll
anybody-
bring it. Oh, okay.
Everybody
want
see
to?
me? Yep, I can.
Yes, Beth.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Garrison. I'm located up in the Seattle area, a little town outside of Seattle called Gold Bar. Moved up here in 2002, and I had already known Joel. I was one of the people that was involved in developing the small business development program at Hoopaw. So a grant writer and a grant manager. Got to know all the guilty parties involved in that. And Joel and I roomed together in a rental house across the street from the Manpower office for about a year. And together with Joel and his dog Dacius. But number of interesting stories grew out of that. But also I was involved in helping to get the program refunded over with Redwood Community Action Agency. So there was about a 4 or 5 year period there where Joel and I and Greg and Terry Coltra and John Woolley and Terry Sapahan, we all worked together on that program. Joel kind of led the operation of that program. After I moved on into real estate in the late 80s in the Eureka area, and Joel moved on to Modesto, we pretty much stayed in touch via email and phone. And then I moved up after 15 years in real estate in the Eureka area. I moved up to the Seattle area where the rest of my family was, and Joel and Claudia had moved into Portland. And that gave me an opportunity to really visit on a couple times a year basis, welcomed by Joel and Claudia for weekends at a time, and developed into a wide-ranging, intellectually curious subject matters, conversations over the years. The one thing I appreciated about Joel was he was a great conversationalist, and he was intellectually curious about so many different items in areas, everywhere from the space and the cosmos and the space program to economic development, politics, craft brewing industry, which we became quite knowledgeable in the Portland area about, including a one-day bus tour that Claudia had funded for Joel and I to go on this bus tour, a beer bus tour is what it was, to tour 6 different craft breweries in the Portland area, and being carted around by the school bus. The guy had rented a school bus and took us to these different breweries. Well, we had been promised to have lunch beforehand, so we had bypassed having lunch. So in the meantime, not getting lunch, we were provided with at least 1 beer at each stop in the brewery. So by the time we got through 6 breweries, we were both lit, and finally did get lunch, but Claudia had to come pick us up and cart us home because there was no way we could go any further at that point. So anyway, a number of different issues like that, and just 40 years of friendship with Joel. One of my best friends. I'm going to miss him a whole bunch. I already do miss the conversations and the intellectual stimulation that Joel brought just about any conversation. So rest in peace, Joel. I miss you, and hope to see you in the future. So signing off. Thanks, Joel. Bye-bye.
I'd like to jump in. This is directed at Sarah Lee. I'm the best man. I was the best man at the wedding. I knew Joel and Claudia long before the wedding. We used to share a lot of good times there after Unity Church services in Modesto. Went to visit a few times. I remember once we were up there at the Microbrew Festival, and Bob Garrison dropped in and did a little fly fishing on a river and caught a trout that he had about $500 invested in with all the equipment and stuff that he had brought. But some good times, some good memories, and regrets that I didn't visit more often. Regrets that it could have been more. I think I really miss him. He had a lot of great things to say. You all know that, you know, there was emails, everything from Cars to Mars. He was for sure a prime example of the kind of man that you'd want your sons to be, and I want to be myself. He's a very giving, loving individual. Proud to have known him. I'll miss the hell out of him. Thank you.
I'd like to say a few words if I can. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Thank you. My name is Ginny Chalet. My husband is Dennis Chalet. I'm showing up on your screen as Virginia. We have been friends with Joel and both Lorna and Claudia for many years. Joel and my husband Dennis, their close bond goes back over 60 years when they met in school in their early teens in Tuolumne County, California. They became best friends and they were brothers in every sense of the word. Dennis lived with Joel's family in Jamestown for several years when they were both in high school. Joel's family had a hotel in Jamestown that Joel's mom wanted to fix up like a bed and breakfast. I think Lorna probably remembers this. And Joel and Dennis would be awakened on school mornings by a hotel bell that Joel's mom would ring to get them out of bed. And Dennis said that the bell made such a loud screeching sound that it made it impossible to sleep. So they had to go to school. And Lorna, you'll also remember this, that Dennis remembers that Joel had a car. It was an early 50s Ford that Joel called Tortilla. And the car had suicide doors that would fly open whenever the car went around corners. And they would often take Tortilla to Maloney's Reservoir, which was up in Tuolumne County, to go swimming. And the two of them enjoyed Friday night movies and Chinese food in Sonora, which was always a big deal. Dennis recalls that Joel always loved to read, especially science fiction books, and his favorite author was Isaac Asimov. And I wanted to share that in the early 1960s, when President Kennedy encouraged Americans to build bomb shelters to avoid atomic fallout due to the nuclear tensions with the Soviet Union, that Joel and Dennis got on board and decided to build a bomb shelter in the backyard behind the hotel. It turned out that Joel decided to drink coffee while Dennis did the grunt work and do the digging. So this arrangement didn't go very well because while Dennis was digging, the two of them started throwing dirt on each other. And after Dennis dug down about 4 feet, they both decided to abandon the whole idea. And I personally met Joel in 1963 through his sister Jane. And I met Dennis that same year through Joel. And after Joel and Dennis finished their stints in the service, we all became good friends with Joel's first wife, Lorna. And our friendship continues to this day and now includes Joel's wife, Claudia. And we love both Lorna and Claudia so very much. And I will always remember Joel for his intelligence, his tenderness, his thirst for knowledge, and his courage, especially in the most recent years in battling his health issues. And we will always have a special place in our hearts for Joel. And we will cherish all the fond memories that we've shared with him and his family. We love you, Joel, and may you rest in peace. Thank you.
I see that some people have typed into the chat that they would also like to speak. Please just fill the silence by coming on. And if anybody else has something to say, please join us now.
Hello. I'm not sure if I can be heard. If somebody could respond.
We can hear you just fine.
All right. I am Paige Moore. I am Joel's niece. And Joel was a part of my life for a good 66, 67 out of my 69 years. Though I appreciate everything that everyone has been saying about Joel, he was all of those things. Joel had a bit of the mischief in him too. There were 5 of us: Joel, my uncle, Jane, my aunt, my 2 older brothers, and myself, that were actually raised more like cousins. And when my family would visit my grandma and grandpa, Joel and Jane would be there. And I recall one summer visiting at the Bird Avenue house in San Jose. Jane and I were the pests, and we're always trying to follow the boys. And one day, Jane and I were for once minding our own business, and the boys came around the front of the house and started taunting us. And of course, being who we were, we had to chase. And as we chased around to the backyard, little did we know that Joel and my brothers, who had long legs, had set up a mud hole, covered it with grass and leaves, were able to jump over it, and Jane and I fell in. Shocked. Didn't see it coming. Got out of the mud hole covered from head to toe. Went up to the house, bawling our eyes out. Grandma Josephine Moore came out, took a look at us, sent us to the bathroom, which had a 6-foot clawfoot tub. Filled the tub with water. We got in up to almost to our thighs, considering our size. And she had to let the water out because the water was too muddy. She filled that tub 3 more times just to get enough mud off so that we could actually have a bath. When we were done with the baths, Grandma essentially lined us all up, swatted each of our rear ends, told us that Jane and I should not be aggravating the boys, told the boys that that was a very dirty stunt to pull and they better never do it again, turned around, handed us each a dime, and told us to go to the candy store. Whereupon, being rich with a dime, we went to the penny candy store and filled our candy bags up. But Joel was loving and kind, but he also had a fun, laughing side to him too, full of mischief. And I'm sorry that so many people missed out on seeing that. Thank you for listening.
Is there anybody else?
Can you hear me now?
At this time, I was going to say I would, yeah, Bob, are you going to
Yeah, I just wanted
share
to
some
add a
else or
couple things.
Portland?
I just wanted to add,
Okay.
go ahead.
And then we'll go to Portland. Okay.
I just wanted to add a couple things to what the gentleman said just before about Joel's sense of humor. One of the things that amazed me about Joel in the last 4 or 5 years during his health issues, diabetes and the infections he had in his foot and so on and so forth, vision problems. It was just the good humor. I mean, I never heard him complain. During that period of time, he was having a lot of difficulties with his health, always in a good mood and willing to carry on with a great conversation and just about anything you can talk about. Joel was willing to carry on. Absolutely shocked when the embolism hit, that we didn't know what happened, but we're going to miss him so much. And one of the things that I came away from with Joel's friendship was a good friendship with Claudia, which I expect will go on into the future. So at any rate, that's my last comment about Joel. Joel, rest in peace. See you soon. Bye.
They're waiting for people from Portland to speak. Can you hear them? They're not turning on. Okay.
Portland, I think we're back to you. We're going to give it just a minute. It is possible that Portland, who has been having connection and bandwidth issues, may be trying to connect. It is possible that our Portland connection, which was having connection problems earlier, may have temporarily disconnected. So I'm going to turn it over to Lorna.
So when Joel and I met, he was this punky young boy who had moved into the mountains from San Jose. And he came to the art class that I was in. School had already started. He was there maybe a couple of weeks after school started. And he came up, sauntering up the stairs with his thin leg black jeans and a black leather jacket and a white t-shirt with his cigarettes rolled into the sleeve of his t-shirt, typical, you know, late 1950s look with the with one of those pompadour hairdos. And I looked at him and I thought, we're either going to be good friends or I'm going to hate him to pieces. Well, we see what happened 62 years later. You know, here we are. And it has always been such an incredible joy to be his friend first. And it didn't take us long to get to be friends. We discovered that we had in common astronomy, archaeology, the space race. I could go on until probably heck freezes over. But I think the upshot is that one of our mutual friends said, you know, about Joel, I think he's the Renaissance man's Renaissance man. And that's kind of how I feel about it. So Greg, do we have any news here?
I just spoke with Portland on the phone. They are having some connectivity issues. We're waiting to see. Claudia wanted to say if they had one more story, and Claudia wanted to say some closing words to us. So Portland, if you are online, please give us a shout out. Let me scroll up and down the list of participants. See, we see, I'm not sure, it was Jan machine I'm looking for.
Looks like Jan's not here yet.
Not here yet.
Yeah.
One last chance, if anybody else has anything they want to say. Other than that, I could also play the slide show for us one more time that we opened with. Some of the people may not have seen it while we're waiting to give Claudia a chance to rejoin us for our closing.
Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to play a slideshow that we put together before we started this. It is a 4-minute and 40-second slideshow. And at any point, if Portland is able to rejoin us, we can pause the show so that Claudia can say her final words to us. So I'll give me a moment while I share my screen.
He's showing the slides to again. I can't run out this picture. This is from our album. Hmm? Mhm. Of course. Jane. That was Jane. Remember this? Oh, Oregon.
I received a chat that says that Claudia may be back online on the phone, so let's give it a moment and see if we can get at least audio from Portland. While we're waiting, I'll read out this message. This is Beverly.
I can see Claudia. She just needs to unmute her phone.
Oh,
There you
okay.
are.
Thank you. Hi. Everybody there?
We're all here, Claudia.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Jan and Jeff are doing a valiant job here trying to get the Zoom to come on. But in the meantime, I just wanted to share, first of all, how touched I am by all of you and your stories. And I have to say, if I can say this, my husband continues to surprise me after 31 years. I had never heard Samara's letter before. So I was shocked and pleasantly touched by that and all of your recollections. What I wanted to share is this. Joel had this posted for some time on his closet door. And I wanted to share it with you because it speaks to me of a man in the third act of his life who's still dreaming and planning. And he said, my 5 priorities: 1, health; 2, love; 3, happiness; 4, learning; 5, success. And then he said, living my conscious life, live well, write, teach, and help others. And then he said in his own hand, dream more, learn more, do more, become more, teach others, inspire others. I share that with you because you're all part of that dream that I think he was living and accomplishing. So thank you all. I love you. Thank you for being here.
Love you, Claudia.
Love you, Claudia.
Love you, Claudia.
Love you bunches.
Namaste.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you, Greg and Denise and Lorna. Thanks for making it all happen. We will see you all. Enjoy your refreshments. And if you're calling in from the outside, Greg, why don't you tell them how you're going to post this video?
I have the YouTube of the slideshow. The slideshow is ripped to a YouTube video, and it's on my personal YouTube channel, Greg Gehr, Gehr. If you search YouTube for my name, you'll find my YouTube channel. Once this recording of this celebration of life is zipped and complete, I will post it at the same place.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Claudia, we love you. Take care. Be well.
Lots of love.
I will note that we had over 44 or 45 sites connected during this. I am estimating that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 125 to 150 people. Many of those sites had a great number of people hooked up to one site. So this was very well attended and very successful. Thank you all for making it happen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Love you, Claudia.
Bye, everybody.
And what kind Thank you, hosts and experts.
Is Bree? Oh,
Okay, got that.
Hi, Claudia.
How to do that.
that's what happens. Huh?
I think we're signing off now.